Breathing becomes shallow, a knot tightens the throat, and the surrounding world seems to spin at a dizzying pace. The heart races, a frantic drumbeat echoing in the ears, as dark and overwhelming thoughts flood the mind like an uncontrollable tide. Panic is not merely an uncomfortable sensation, it can be a terrifying experience that paralyzes, isolates, and robs one of inner peace. So often, in moments of despair, the search for relief feels futile, a cry into the void. But what if, amidst this turbulence, there were a beacon, a singular thought capable of guiding one back to calm? This is not a generic sermon about the stresses of modern life, nor is it a technical manual for overcoming anxiety with breathing exercises. It is a deep dive into the real, visceral experience of a panic attack, focusing on a transformative moment, a ray of divine hope that emerged when all seemed lost. The journey we will share here is about discovering, amidst the chaos of a desperate mind, a simple yet eternally powerful truth that not only alleviated a particularly brutal attack, but became a bedrock for hope and resilience. It is not about magic cures or denying the reality of suffering, but about witnessing how faith, even in its most fragile form, can be the anchor that sustains us when the waves threaten to engulf us. I will take you to that specific moment, not for you to simply hear a story, but for you to feel the gravity of the situation and, perhaps, to recognize echoes of your own struggles. Imagine being caught in a downward spiral, where each negative thought feeds the previous one, creating a perfect storm within. The sense of losing control is overwhelming, and the belief that you are on the verge of complete collapse becomes almost palpable. It is in this desolate landscape, under the crushing weight of fear and uncertainty, that a new perspective began to form. A perspective that did not arise from my own strength or intellect, but was gently placed in my mind, like a seed cast on arid soil, merely waiting for light to germinate. This is the turning point, where hopelessness gives way to a spark of trust in something greater, in a love that transcends human understanding, and in a truth that remains unwavering even as our inner world crumbles. The crux of this narrative lies in unraveling how a single thought, simple in its formulation yet profound in its significance, could serve as a watershed moment. It is not a quick fix, nor is it a turning of a blind eye to the genuine challenges that anxiety and panic impose. Rather, it is about discovering a spiritual tool, a constant and comforting reminder that empowers us to confront the tempest with a newfound fortitude. We shall delve into the nature of this thought, the manner in which it manifested, and most crucially, how it can be internalized and utilized by anyone who has ever felt at the mercy of their own fears. This is a promise that even in the darkest of nights, hope can be found, not in the absence of struggle, but in the presence of resilient faith and a higher purpose that sustains us. The journey ahead will guide us through the experiential realization of this moment, the recognition of the transformative power of faith, and the practical application of this salvific thought into our daily lives. In that maelstrom of extreme sensations, where reality seemed to warp and the body reacted with uncontrollable ferocity, the thought that emerged was not a declaration of personal strength, but a simple acknowledgement of the truth regarding divine sovereignty. This was not a superficial belief, the kind one recites in moments of calm, but a deep-seated conviction that permeated the very fissures of my most primal fear. It was the realization that, irrespective of the intensity of my physical and mental anguish, I was not the absolute master of my destiny in that instant. This surrender was not an act of passive resignation, but an active transference of burden, a leap of faith that recognized the existence of a plan and a power far grander than my own capacity to comprehend or control. Instead of battling the storm with my own finite strength, the thought guided me to anchor my hope in an unshakable rock, trusting that even in the eye of the hurricane, there was a steady hand holding me. Consider, for instance, the metaphor of a small boat amidst a raging ocean. The boat's attempt to command the waves would be futile and exhausting. Wisdom, however, lies in entrusting the navigation to an experienced captain, one who knows the currents and possesses the power to guide the vessel safely through adversity. Such was the essence of that thought, the admission that I was not the captain of that particular storm, but that there existed a captain, a creator, who held absolute dominion over all. This understanding ushered in a subtle yet transformative shift. It wasn't an immediate alleviation of the physical burden, but rather a recontextualization of the struggle. Suddenly, The fight ceased to be against my own unruly mind, and instead became a settled trust in an external power, one unfazed by the ferocity of my fears. This perspective realigned the internal dynamics, dispelling the sense of absolute isolation that panic typically inflicts. I began to perceive the experience not as a personal failing, but as a moment where human frailty intersected with divine omnipotence. Consider the difference between a soldier fighting alone on a battlefield and one who knows their troops have their back and their general possesses an infallible strategy. The intensity of the fight may be similar, but the wellspring of hope and the capacity for endurance are radically different. This thought operated as that assurance of support, reminding me that while I might be experiencing the full force of the onslaught, I was not facing it bereft of aid. There was a divine purpose at play, and my role was to remain steadfast and trusting, allowing that purpose to unfold. More profoundly, this recognition of divine sovereignty liberated me from the tyranny of self-blame and shame that often accompanies panic attacks. We often feel ashamed for not being strong enough or for giving in to fear. However, by embracing the notion that ultimate control resides not within us but in God, this pressure significantly dissipates. The struggle then ceases to be a measure of my weakness and instead becomes an opportunity to showcase the strength of my faith and the depth of my trust. Imagine an artist meticulously crafting a masterpiece, knowing that every brushstroke, even if it appears chaotic to an untrained eye, is part of a grander,